All right, so today on Hoopy Doodle, we're gonna take the front end off this Grom so that we can get some measurements of the stock steering tube so that we can make our own steering tube. All right, so today is the day. We're gonna start taking this thing apart, starting with the front end. Strip this thing down, man. Get rid of all non-essentials. Let's start it up one last time. So now with the headlight off, I'm going to take off the speedometer. There's 3 screws. There's one there, and another one right up in here. And the speedometer comes loose. And now we've got one wire connection connecting onto the speedometer, which is this guy right here. And this guy's got this rubber boot over the top of it. I'm gonna pull that boot sort of back, kind of like that. And the connector itself, see that little tab right there? I'm gonna press that down, and the connector will come out. And then our speedometer is free of the bike. Alright, now I'm gonna remove the throttle from the bike. I'm gonna take this whole section here right off. And to do that, we've got a couple of Phillips head screws. There's one right in here, and there's another one on the back side there. I'm just gonna loosen these up. I'm just loosening those up. I'm not fully removing them. And that makes this whole thing loose. And now I just have to loosen up these cables, and I can remove this whole thing from the bike, or I can loosen up the handlebars and sort of slide the handlebars that way while I pull this thing this way. And that's what I'm going to do. Now we also have to disconnect the brake lever sensor. That guy's located underneath here. And just pull these guys off. So to remove the handlebars, there's 4 bolts right here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now with the top portions removed there, I can lift this handlebar up. Everything is loose on there. All right, then now we should, with the handlebars loose, be able to pull this guy off the end. Just like that. Now this guy's loose. Now we'll go ahead and take the brake levers off of there. There's 2 bolts right in the back side right here. These 2 guys. I don't want to lose these bolts, so I'm going to thread them right back in where they came from. So to remove the clutch lever, there is a clutch lever sensor right here. So my first move is going to be to remove this little boot here and unplug the electrical connectors to that sensor. And then now if we look at the back side of this clutch lever, you'll see there's 2 bolts right here. We'll remove those bolts and then remove the clutch lever. Remove this little clamp part here, and then the lever should come straight off the bars. And remove these all the way. The alternative is to remove the grip off the bars and then slide this off the bars. Or like I'm doing right here, you can completely unscrew this guy and then unclamp it from the bars. All right, and a little turn signal switch is kind of in the way. That kind of has to slide these 2 pieces. You have to slide the turn signal button out this way. And then you can pull these things apart. Take it off the bars. And there, now we can take our handlebars off the bike. And doesn't it look funny without bars? All right, so the next thing I want to do is remove the clutch cable. To do that, I come over here. This is where the clutch cable comes into the clutch housing. This is your little lever for the clutch. And so it's this cable here we want to remove. To do that though, we need to have some slack in this cable. And to get slack, we come over here to the clutch lever. Move this little rubber housing aside. And this guy here, we're going to loosen this up. I want to rotate these guys. You can see how there's a slot right there. This other one has a slot too. If I bring those slots together like that, then I can pull the cable housing sort of back. And then get the cable out like that. And then it releases right there. And this guy slides forward, and then you can pull the little end of the cable out like that. And now we can push this thing down into the housing. Alright, and then down here we should be able to pull this guy forward, push the cable that way, and it should come loose. The clutch cable here, I'm just going to push this down and get it out of the way here of the front end, get it disconnected from the front end. And now we're left with a jumble of electronics and some other stuff up here. We still got the throttle cables, and the front brake cable is up here. The front brake line is up here. This brake line I'm going to leave attached to the front end. Everything else I want to sort of disconnect from the front end. And so I'm going to start sort of unjumbling all these electronics and trying to get those separate from the front forks here. Alright, so you can see right here, there's a little sort of clip that wraps around the wire loom here and then sort of snaps in here through a little hole. And if we depress the two sides of it right there, we should be able to push that out. I'm going to do that using some bent nose pliers. So we got that loose, and then now we find there's another one right here.
Do the same thing.
Alright, so now we've got the horn, this guy right here, and there's a bolt holding that guy on. And there's another one of those little clips, the little plastic clips over here. Alright, and now I want to disconnect the handlebar controls on the right side where your starter switch and everything would be. So if we look at the underside of this guy, sort of pull this cover back a little bit. You can see we've got a couple connectors in there. This one just has this little tab on the top. Push that guy down. I should be able to disconnect this connector. Alright, so then now this side is disconnected. And this is sort of off by itself. Kind of. We still got the throttle cables. We may have to disconnect the throttle cables from the actual bike in order to make this happen. Or we could just wait until we take this top clamp off and we'll just slide it off that way. Alright, and then I'm going to do the same thing with all these electronics here, this whole loom. When I take this top clamp off, I'm just going to slide all these things up and out that way. So the next step, take off this top clamp. Alright, then in order to get this top tree off, we've got to take this guy off. This is a 29mm, which is a giant socket. And then I'm going to want to secure the frame using my engine hoist here. Alright, so the front forks are secured by a couple of Allen bolts right here and another Allen bolt up here. That's what clamps these guys on and this guy on right here. I'm going to undo this clamp up here, undo the rest of the bolts in the center there, and then this should be able to pop this top clamp off. And then we should be able to slide the bottom clamp with both forks off the bottom of the frame. I'm going to do the same on this other side. Alright, and then we want to get in here, take this nut off the top. There's a washer underneath that, take that guy off. And then we have just the top clamp there. Alright, so then I've got a rubber mallet. I'm just going to give this a little bit of a tap. There it is! It's off! So that's top clamp off. All right, so now it should be my opportunity to pull all these cables and stuff up through here. Let's see if I'm right. This makes it any easier. This is all the rest of this wire harness. All right, now right here we've got another nut on here that holds the rest of the forks on, and this guy looks like we just tapped that off. All right, so it's this nut right here. I want to get that off. In order to do that, it's got a bunch of little ridges that go around here. I'm gonna get in here and just tap that thing, and rotate it around. All right, that's loose. That guy off. Oh, look at that. Here's our bearing race. This guy right here. All right, and then here's our bearing. All right, so now what I want to do is lift the bike up and separate the front end from the frame. Ta-da! There it is. All right, so the reason I took all that stuff off and the reason we're here is to actually get some measurements on here. And so we still need to take off the inner races for the bearings there. So I'm gonna go ahead and knock those out with a piece of PVC pipe. See how that works out, huh? So I'm just gonna insert this down in there. And basically, there's little edges on this. I'm catching the edge right there of the other bearing on the bottom. And I can move this guy around to catch the edge on either. You know, I catch the edge over here, I catch the edge over there. I'm gonna knock that guy out. But yeah, you can kind of see down in there and that there is a lip from the bearing, and the inner wall of the head tube or the steering tube is actually a wider diameter than the bearing. So there's a lip that you can get a hold of with that piece of PVC pipe and knock that out, hopefully. Although these things are a press fit, so they're in there pretty tight. Let's see, I'm gonna hit this with a hammer too on the other end. All right, so I did just get the one on the bottom out. It just knocked out way easier than I thought it would. But there it is. There's the race for the bottom. And I hit it out with the PVC pipe so that I don't damage this thing or anything in there. The PVC pipe is much softer material than any of the metal that's in there, so that will take all the damage and this guy will be fine. And then the top one, I'm gonna have to lay this bike down to do that actually. All right, yeah, because I need to be able to get up in here at an angle. There's the other one. All right, there's the top bearing. Looks a lot like the bottom bearing. So this is a bearing race. It's not the bearing, but the bearing race. So now those are out, we should be able to bring the bike back up and measure that tube so that we can start planning out materials for our new tube. All right, so now you can see with the bearing race is out, we have basically just a straight tube in there. So we want to measure this, the inside diameter and the outside diameter, and then there's this little seat here for the bearing races and stuff to fit in. And so we want to measure all those things, get all the dimensions of that, and then we can figure out what kind of tube size we need in order to fabricate our own head tube, steering tube. All right, so the very inside, we got about 1.5 inches, and then where the bearing sits, the bearing race sits in here, that is like 1.9 inches. And then the very outside, the outside diameter of this tube, 2 1/8. And the reason we're doing this, or the reason we're making a new head tube like this, a new steering tube, is that basically this has the VIN number on it. This is the part of the bike. This is the key part of the bike that cannot go back on the road. In theory, I could cut this thing and weld the rest of the frame onto a new head tube. I'm not gonna do that because I wanna do something more creative, and that's questionably legal. I mean, I do need to make a new head tube, and whether or not it is fiction, like folktale stuff or not, supposedly there are techniques and ways of reading the VIN number on the side of here, even when the VIN number is being like ground off. So I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what they say. That's why we're doing it. just to be safe, and really because we've never done it before and we want to try it. We think it'll be cool. So thanks for coming along on this journey with me. Today I'm going to go ahead and do some research at this point and see if I can figure out what I need for the head tube, the steering tube there, and see if I can get that ordered. And then we'll be that much closer to getting started on this project, start making new pieces for this bike, which will be really cool. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time. Keep on wrenching.